Thanks everybody for coming here. My name is Sharma. Thanks for the introduction, Seva. I don't want to block the screen. I'm very used to walking, so yeah, I won't go out of scope. But how many of you have heard of Zebra Technologies? How many of you know what they do? Wow, we got a pretty good crowd. That's not bad. So basically, we design a variety of products and solutions that you may come across, whether it's your Amazon person coming to deliver your package, you go to the grocery store, you're getting your groceries, you go to the airlines. I'm pretty sure a lot of you took a flight over here to get here, and you'll notice that all that barcode scanning technology, that's something that we do. Who's watching football nowadays, right now, in the season, right? If American football, right? Yeah. So not soccer, I'm sorry, but not the real football in European, but American football, right? So if you take a look at American football and the way that they show the games, they show real-time movement over the screens. That's our technology embedded inside every single NFL player equipment that they're wearing. Our RFID technology goes ahead and gives the ability to show real-time movement across the field, right? So you're able to see that when you're watching your games, and that, just think in the back of your head that that's us, right? Whether it's logistics, transportation, whether it's going into the NFL, whether it's just going out and buying groceries, whatever the case may be. Even walking into a Target, for example, or a Walmart, for example, you're going to go in there and say, hey, I'm looking for item A, B, or C. The associate's going to pull out this little thing that looks like a phone. Chances are that's one of our devices that we created. And they're going not only does it look like a phone, it has a lot of capabilities in it. They look through their inventory. They can go ahead and find out how many, what quantity of items are, in stock, where to find them, if they need to refill orders, so on and so forth. So that kind of gives you a broad idea of, what Zebra does, what we're involved in, and where the business is going, right? This presentation, I think it's important to learn what the company does in order to understand how we scale something like SAMM at an organization of this magnitude. Understanding the variety of different products and solutions that come into play, right? And you have to tackle all of those. So when you're implementing a framework across all various business lines and different products and different solutions, you can't sometimes always have like a one tailored approach towards the whole enchilada, I'd like to say, right? So we all know there's a lot of challenges, right? When scaling up, your application security model, in this case, SAMM, right? And I drilled it down to 3 major challenges that I thought that were relevant today. What I saw, looking at the whole organization, I saw, a variety, like the way we divide up our organization, for example, is we have upwards of 20 different business units. Each business unit, you could think about creating different products or solutions that could be spun off or, as different businesses at any given time, right? So as you have a lot of business units, you have, there's lack of standardization, there's lack of uniformity because not everything applies the same way, right? So it's really hard. They use different tools, different processes. So that's a major challenge that you have to overcome, right? Number 2, people may think that, as long as you get buy-in from leadership, you're all fine and dandy. That doesn't really seem to be the case. You also need to drill down and think about the teams that you're going to be targeting. You need to get buy-in from the teams, because what are you asking them to do, right? You're asking them to take on an additional activity on top of their day job, right? Now focusing on security and implementing these practices and framework that you put into place for them. That's time consuming. It takes learning the model. It takes understanding, learning, applying, and rinse and repeat, right? Most of all, it takes time, right? And that's why, people are kind of resistant, but unless you show them the value that it brings, right? So I think of that as a big challenge that I came across. Another major one that I came across was, and I think a lot of people can resonate with this, is, a previous presentation, someone brought up security champions, and I'm going to bring that up too, right? What I dealt with over here was that, a lot of the teams, when assessing them, I found to be, a lot of them didn't have the foundational knowledge to be able to go ahead and apply something like this within the organization. So if we're coming down from the top-down approach and saying we need to go ahead and apply this framework here, Tom over here may not have the skill sets, but he is a security champion of his team. His job is to go ahead and drive this change within his teams, disseminate that information, educate them, and apply it, right? So I noticed there was a huge gap when it came to that. A lot of practices that go into SAMM, it's obviously throughout the SDLC, threat modeling, just vulnerability management in general, and just some of the other, I'm not going to list out all 90 pieces and all practices, but there seems to be a skill gap that needs to be addressed, right? So moving on to this, what we were looking for and how we got to SAMM, I'm going to kind of, breeze past this because I kind of already addressed it. We needed something that was risk-driven and measurable across the organization, something that we could bring out a yardstick and measure. Because if you can't measure it, you can't improve it, right? And that's a fact. So the need was we needed a solution that applies to, that we can kind of fit into our business model with the diverse teams and business units that we currently have. The challenge was there was no model at the time. Like if you look into different frameworks right now, they're pretty extensive. They require a lot more time, a lot more education on it, and a lot more commitment. And it's not sometimes, they don't really fit in certain businesses within every single company, right? So that's another challenge that we came across. Then the solution was we came across SAMM, and SAMM seemed like pretty simple and tech agnostic, and it just seemed like something that we can work with and tailor to our needs. It's clear, it's concise, and most of all, it's measurable, right? We can hold people accountable if we can measure something, right? We can set targets if we can, and look at people's successes and failures and whether they obtain them or not. We can't do any of that without being able to measure and report, right? So that was our solution. How we arrived at that, like I mentioned before, I'm going to breeze past this. We looked at the various frameworks that we have right now. Now, needless to say, we do have different business units that have to abide by the ISO 27001 for certifications and so on and so forth. But when you're looking into something else like SOC 2 or NIST or BSIMM, it's pretty clear that what we were looking for between measurability and clarity was definitely inclusive inside SAMM framework. So that's how we chose SAMM, right? I think right now it's also important to understand the evolution of SAMM. We didn't just start this yesterday, right? It's been a couple of years going. We started back in 2022. We introduced this framework after a lot of consideration. We chose SAMM. Back in 2022, we went ahead and we went full force, and we tried to apply this model to the organization, right? Over the last 3 years, we've seen great improvements over the teams. Needless to say, there's many challenges that come and pitfalls that we encountered along the way, and we still are, and we're addressing them as we go on. Because security is, like Ara mentioned before, it's not a checklist. It's not a checkbox exercise, one and done, right? It's continuous, right? So We've been seeing, we've been identifying gaps that the various teams have. We've had tailored approaches, and we've seen great improvement, optimized processes, because that's what the framework is really for, right? Having those processes and controls in place to reach that level of maturity that you need your businesses to reach, your organization as a whole, I would say. And now today, I'm going to go ahead and share our implementation journey with you, regarding the framework, highlighting some of the challenges we encountered, lessons learned, and some of the key insights that we took away from that, right? Our current, when we were applying SAMM, this is kind of what it looked like, right? Well, you heard some other folks talk about different scopes. This is a different type of scope that I'm talking about now. Think about scopes as different, the different business units and IT teams that I mentioned earlier, right? So when you have upwards of 20 business units and you have upwards of like 15 different distinct IT teams, you're talking about a huge number of different scopes that have different varying processes, create different products, different solutions, and that creates a challenge. So we chose scopes for all of those teams. We held them independently accountable. So I wanted to go ahead and get them all assessed, every single one of them. Did everybody like it? No. But was it useful and effective? Absolutely, right? The implementation strategy that we used, we went with a big bang when it came to the business units. We rolled it out all the way. Now, needless to say, they did their self-assessments first, right? But then we also brought in consultants to go ahead and externally assess every single one of those teams. We can't just take the word for them, and we need to bring in professionals to conduct those assessments, right? Some of those people are in this room today, so who helped us out with that. So then we introduced it, while we introduced it, the IT organization really seemed to like what we were doing, and we went ahead and we were asked to apply to the IT organization, which is a separate beast of its own, right? Now we're not talking about business units. They're totally different. The requirements are different, but it was an opportunity for us where there may be some unified processes, right? Because a lot of IT teams are divided up into sub-teams, right? So that was an opportunity. And what it looks like today, it's continuous monitoring and reporting through the use of not only tooling, but most of all to executive leadership and bringing visibility out into the teams in the form of dashboards, dynamic dashboards that come out of real-time data where we house our SAMM improvements, scores, metrics, KPIs. All of that is displayed in public dashboards that are readily available for anyone to see throughout our organization. How they're doing, what targets they're being held to, what their historical data was, what their current score is, where they're falling short, things of that nature. And I think that is a really important thing to have, right? To show visibility within the organization and show that trend, whether or not this is working or not. The last thing I'd like to see is that trend going down, and that's a failure. I don't want to see that. I want to see an upward trend of improvement, right? So I think it's very important to incorporate dashboards to show progress. That's my point there. So now coming into the bulk of the things, right? The challenges and the pitfalls that we faced. And I believe that, in the interest of time, there's really three major ones that I see. Number one being that, like I mentioned before, everyone's not the same, right? Whether it's business units, the IT teams, they're not the same, right? They have different requirements, different needs. We can't hold them to the same bar, right? So what's a perfect score for one team may not be a perfect score for another team, because there's certain things that that may not be in their model, or it may be handled a different way. I don't like to use the word not applicable, because it's really goes against the framework, right? It's not that it's not applicable. It's done a different way, or it may be a shared responsibility. They may be doing this task a different way. So you have to take that into consideration, right? That folks are not the same. Their products are not the same. They're very diverse processes across the board, right? And that could lead to, if you hold everybody to the same bar, it could lead to inefficiencies, right? And then rework down the road, and that's not what you want to do, right? Number two, what I mentioned earlier, getting buy-in from leadership is one thing. Getting buy-in from teams is another. So we got a lot of resistance from some teams who thought that this framework was not relevant to the work that they did, right? We got teams over here. We have John's team over here saying that, we've been doing this for a very long time. We're very mature, and everything, going through the framework and everything else. I think they think that they're perfect. They're doing a great job, right? Without even going through the assessment at that point in time. They were able to tell us that, no, this doesn't apply. So that was something that we had to overcome. And realistically, when you're looking at, some of the varying teams, I mean, it leads to a lot of pushback and slower adoption. And I think one way to overcome that is clear communication, right? Within the team, clear understanding of the model, and really showing them the relevance to how this model applies to their work, right? And identifying gaps as a result. Now, listen, we can go ahead and assess them and find out later on that, they actually do conform, and they have almost a perfect score. They're doing all the right things. They have the controls, the processes, the tooling in place. They're at a different level of maturity, and that's fine, right? You're going to come across some of those teams, right? But then, there are certain things that they didn't have in place, right? So that's something we wouldn't be able to uncover without using a framework like SAMM, right? And I think last but not least, I've probably heard the word security champions over here, quite a bit. And it's not a term that I came up with, but it is something we use across the organization. The knowledge of the security champions, there were some gaps there. There was limited knowledge, and partially due to, that's no one's fault. That's not their fault, right? Because again, this is an additional activity. These people have day jobs. Now they're being tasked to be security champions. In our world, we call them BISOs, Business Information Security Officers, right? Especially for the large business units, right? And their job is to ensure that their teams are in line, and they're tasked with guiding their teams, not implementing the framework, but disseminating information, guiding them, helping them throughout the transitions, and talking with the product security team and other stakeholders, and collaborating with other different teams to really see where they fit, right? And gain that knowledge that they don't have currently. So that was another challenge that we had to deal with across the organization. Moving on, how do we address the diversity of the teams? We soon realized that we can't hold everybody to the same bar, and for that reason, we looked at creating different target postures. Target postures is holding people to different, to different baselines, basically, across SAMM, right? As you can see over here, I don't know if this has a laser pointer. Yeah, it does. Okay. So right now, I'm just showing you a screenshot over here of the 5 major business functions, right? But we also went ahead and created target postures within each one of the streams, right? Each one of the business practices and each one of the all 90 aspects of SAMM, right? So how we did this was by identifying and looking at the businesses and what they do. What is a good fit for them? What should they be doing? What should they not be doing? Is this bar too high? Will they ever get there? Is it realistic? Maybe not. Maybe it is. So we took a stab at that, and we came up with target postures. And this is kind of like a mock-up, right? It's not real data. So I'm going to go ahead and show you like, okay, fine. This team, this is based off of one team, right? So there's one team in the governance, design, implementation, verification, operations. They're being held to these standards over here. These red bullseyes, those are the target postures that they're being held into. When you drill down into them, you'll notice that there's target postures within inside governance and each one of the different business functions that kind of correlate and bring this, that show you the top level target posture where they are in the business function themselves, right? So the goal over here is for the teams to hit their targets, right? What we call target postures. Based off of the challenges and the pitfalls that we just explained, there were a lot of lessons learned, right? And I think it's important to understand target postures before moving on to that. The lessons learned were we need to engage all of our teams and our business units, early, and not only early, but often throughout the implementation and throughout, regular cadence meetings. And how we did that was like resistance, that we're feeling from the teams. It could be mitigated by effective communication in terms of engagement, right? Earlier, it addresses their concerns. It lets them voice their opinions. It lets you understand what they're doing that differs, and then so you can make a call on your end at like where do you want to set that bar for that team once you understand what they're exactly doing, right? And then you can also show some of those teams like Tom's team who thought that they were doing excellent, the relevance to SAMM in their work, right? Or people that, other teams in our organization who didn't think it was relevant at all. We soon found out, after talking to the teams and explaining the model to them a bit better, they did understand that it was very relevant to what they were doing. They just had a misconception of the framework, lack of communication, right? Lack of understanding, I should say, right? Another lesson learned for us was definitely don't underestimate when it comes to training and supporting your teams, right? Do not underestimate that. Security champions, they're going to need sufficient training, and how we did that was by using a variety of different training methods, like secure code training and training on threat modeling and application risk profiles, bringing in external consultants to do workshops, and really invest, in our people. And not only the security champions, but also their teams and their team leads that will be responsible for implementing this, right? And last but not least, it ties back into leveraging the target postures, right? Defining realistic targets for the teams that can be achievable and they're actually aligned with their business goals, with what their team is producing. So after the lessons learned, we had to refine our strategy. We had to go ahead and make some realignments, and one of those is obviously adopting target postures. We went from having one target posture to having above 5, right? Okay, so we introduced various target postures. I'm not going to list them all out. It's basically tailored to each classification that we did across the business units. We came up with these target postures over here, right? Another thing we had to do was we had to enhance our training. Like I mentioned before, with the workshops, including threat modeling training, risk profiling, incorporating it into our learning management system. And another thing we had to do was, team engagement. We addressed, the resistance by early communication, right? And that eventually reduces the pushback, right? And after these realignments, we had some actionable insights, right? And I'm not going to go through these one by one. I'm just going to hit the top things. I believe everybody can, see where I'm going with this. You need to have a tailored approach to your team's needs, right? You need to invest in your people, whether it's training, whether it's knowledge sharing, collaboration methods, whatever the case may be. One thing that worked for us, target postures, and our teams adopting the target postures, right? Another insight that I learned was don't go with the big bang rollout. You try doing a piloting before scaling up, right? Last but not least, continuous collaboration goes a long way. Regular cadence meetings, having all the security champions in one forum, sharing ideas, definitely hits home, and it definitely keeps everybody engaged and informed. Out of this came some do's and don'ts, you know, and this is based off of my experience. Tailor your implementation. Invest in your security teams that you're giving them a second job basically to do, right? Communicate early and often. Track progress with the use of dashboards and make them visible to not only your teams but to your leadership to see the progress that you're making, right? And leverage external expertise. I cannot stress that enough. You need to involve the experts where needed, right? Some of the don'ts, I think it's pretty, I'm just gonna go ahead and roll past this. Don't assume. Assumptions can lead to, and oversights can lead into all these don'ts, right? Don't assume uniformity. Don't neglect resistance. Try to understand it. Don't overlook training needs. Try to invest in it, okay? Don't roll out too quickly. Try to pilot first. Don't ignore feedback because that's just going to keep you in a negative loop. You can learn from feedback and improve. So in conclusion, two things, right? The importance of tailoring SAMM to your organizational needs and teams, and what role does training, communication, and leadership plays in overcoming the challenges that you may face in your journey, right? And I hope that you could take some of these lessons in your SAMM implementation and use it within your own organization, and also explore available resources, especially external resources, to help with that journey. Continuous implementation is what we're doing now. Our company does acquisitions. When we do acquisitions, we bring them through the SAMM model. We make them take a self-assessment. We also get them externally assessed, and we help them throughout their improvement process. Quiz time. Who's been paying attention? Okay, so what was the strategic realignment that Zebra had to consider and apply? Was it A, adopting target postures, B, enhanced training and support, C, fostering team engagement, or D, all of the above? Who thinks the answer is A? You win $1 million. Who thinks the answer is B? Who thinks the answer is C? Who thinks the answer is D? You guys are right. There we go. All right. So, and then you might be asking yourself, like, well, how much do I need to invest, to scaling SAMM within your organization? Unfortunately, I can't tell you the answer to that. That's dependent on many contributing factors: size of your organization, the leadership direction the direction that leadership is trying to take within the organization, and how much they're willing to invest in it. So that's something. What I can tell you is this stuff can be done first manually before bringing in the big, toolings and big experts. But I would say get a handle on it first before bringing those in, because once you start investing into something like this, you need to continue. It's a continuous improvement, right? But what I can tell you is the investment is greater in the beginning, and it tends to the investment tends to come a little bit lower over the years of implementation, if that makes you feel better, right? Unless they come out with a new technology, right, where this is moot. That's all I have for today. Are there any questions?